The goal of every composer, every songwriter, is to create a music that gets spread worldwide. They crave the feeling of knowing that millions of people are listening to and enjoying their work through their headphones, through radio, or through other media, such as a popular movie. With the enormous amount of music being produced every single day, most of them are destined to fail, but some of them succeed. Their song becomes popular. It stays popular for some time, and after a while, the hype just naturally falls off. So the creator tries to make a new hit. That's the basic cycle of every piece of art. But on some rare occasions, some great music even surpasses this natural lifespan. The popularity doesn't seem to decline, but quite the opposite happens. The hype grows and grows even after many months or years after the release of the song. But as it is with everything in life, nothing is everlasting, not even the greatest work of art. It may take years, but inevitably these top charting songs, they become overplayed. All these positive feelings you once got from the music like this, it eventually turns into just annoyance. Some examples of this from a field of pop music are Gangnam Style, released in the year 2012, and Despacito, released in the year 2017. In this video, we are going to focus on overplayed pieces from a piano repertoire. This instrument holds so many iconic pieces, ranging from classical music all the way to today's popular music. Today we are going to discover which one of them holds the title of being the most overplayed piano piece of all time, and why that is. Firstly, let's establish the reasons why a song can become so popular that it eventually becomes overplayed. And later we will use these reasons as kind of criteria to determine our number one spot. It is essentially impossible to list all the reasons why a song becomes successful, but I think I came up with 5 key factors that can push any piece of music towards popularity. First, melody. I don't think there is much to say here. Every great piano piece stands on a great melody. In pop music, you can get away with not having the most interesting melody per se, because you have the luxury of lyrics. A typical pop song melody consists of a lot of repeated notes, but they're kind of hidden underneath different lyrics, different words. So the final melody doesn't come off as repetitive as it actually is. But the same cannot apply to piano. Instrumental melodies have to be much richer, much bolder, much more expressive, in order to compensate for the lack of variation created by lyrics. So a beautiful, catchy melody is a must. Another factor is the form of the piece. The importance of form lies in that it helps to bring cohesion as well as contrast to the piece. The most common structures of piano pieces are, for example, binary form, rondo form, variation form, or the most popular one, sonata form. The different structures also help with memorability of the piece. The most used form today is of course the pop song structure, so the pieces that utilizes this form will have a slight edge over the rest. The third factor to ensure success of the music is harmony. Once again, there are some chord progressions that just work better than others. In classical music, the harmony is often much more sophisticated. There is a clear sense of progression, where we build tension in the harmony, and afterwards release it. We have one very tense chord that resolves into a very stable one. In today's music, the chord progressions are much more seamless. One chord gently turns into a different one. There is no tension between the chords, no hard cadences. Just 4 chords that float in a loop. So even though the classical approach is much more interesting, the modern harmony has its benefits as well, such as catchiness and once again memorability. The fourth criteria for an overly played piano piece is how difficult it actually is to play the music. When you hear street performers or people on the internet playing an instrument, it's usually not the hardest piece ever. Piano is a difficult instrument, and it quite literally takes a lifetime to even come close to mastering it. And most people are not willing to invest so much time into it. So logically, easier pieces will get much more attention, because it is actually in your ability to learn them and perform them. This leads to increase in popularity. Therefore, it leads to the possibility that the piece will become overplayed. The fifth reason is, I wouldn't say necessary, but it surely boosts the music above the rest. And it's if the piece is used in some other media, or it is perhaps tied with some special occasion or some kind of tradition. The inclusion of the music in other medias, such as movies, radio, YouTube shorts, TikTok, whatever, it leads to the feeling of the song being quite literally everywhere. One example of piece of music that is being tied with some special occasion is Mendelssohn's Wedding March. That is of course tied with, well, a wedding. Thanks to the association with that event, the piece became timeless, even though it is nowhere close to being one of Mendelssohn's finest works. So this is our list of properties that most overplayed piano pieces have in common. Now we will look at some actual music that, in my mind, almost has what it takes to get the #1 spot. We will use these listed reasons as criteria to see in which areas they are lacking, therefore why they cannot be crowned as the most overplayed piano piece of all time. We will start with Beethoven's first movement of his Moonlight Sonata. In terms of difficulty, I don't think it's fair to say that this piece is easy. Being able to achieve this tranquility by balancing the dynamics of the accompaniment with the melody takes a lot of skill. Musically, it's a very difficult piece, but on the technical side, being able to hit the right keys at the right time, well, that's pretty easy in this first movement. It's actually one of the very first few pieces that most new pianists learn. The structure of the music is of course a sonata form. The beauty of this structure and why it works is that it perfectly balances something familiar with something new. It introduces some musical material and later repeats it with slight changes. This keeps the music coherent and familiar, without it being overly predictable, therefore boring. The harmony is not that complex, at least for classical music standards. It almost always centers around its tonal center of C-sharp minor, which helps with the memorability of the piece. The music was used in countless movies, video games, campaigns, and many different forms of media, so it retained a large popularity thanks to all that exposure. The area in which this piece is lacking to be placed at the #1 spot is, in my opinion, the melody. It might be a bit of a controversial take, but hear me out. I'm not saying that the melody is bad, not at all. It's actually perfect for this type of slow, atmospheric movement. Some crazy, really energetic melody would really be out of place here. Nonetheless, what I'm trying to say is that the melody itself is not that memorable. At least not as much as the other melodies from the upcoming pieces. Let's actually look at perhaps the most recognizable melody ever written. I'm talking about Beethoven's Für Elise. The opening notes of E and D sharp are so ingrained in our brains. The harmony that lies underneath that amazing melody is as simple as you can get. We shift between the chords of A minor, which is our tonic, and E, which is our dominant to our tonic. This creates a constant feeling of tension and resolution that keeps you hooked in the music. I don't think I need to talk about the impact that this piece had on our pop culture. But one neat thing that I found out while doing research for this video is that in Taiwan, the rubbish trucks are playing this tune in order to alert the citizens to take their trash out. That's really cool. The reason why I cannot put this piece at the #1 spot lies somewhere between the difficulty and the form of the piece. You see, Für Elise is in a rondo form. This structure has one main section, an A section, that repeats throughout the whole piece, and there is a separate, different section tucked between each repetition that does not repeat. This famous melody is contained within our A section, and it repeats throughout the piece 3 times in total. So that means there are 2 other sections present. I don't blame you if you never heard these. They are so incredibly less known than our A section that it almost feels like they are not part of the same music. The reason for that is mainly the shift in difficulty. The A section is pretty easy. The melody fits the right hand pretty nicely and the left hand just plays a simple arpeggios. So while this is a beginner level pianist material, the other 2 sections give struggle to even an intermediate player. So most newcomers just stop there. They move to a different piece and they don't bother to return to learn these 2 sections. You can notice that even most performers just end the music after the A section, or more likely, they turn it into Still Dre. Our next piece struggles because of similar reasons. While The Entertainer is not the most difficult piece in the world, it certainly isn't beginner friendly. But we cannot neglect the sheer impact that this piece's iconic, carefree, catchy melody, supported by a simple 1-4-5 chord progression, had on our world. While it was included in many movies, the main source of recognition, at least in the US, comes from ice cream trucks blasting this tune while delivering sweet treats to children. It has quite an unusual form, best described as episodic. It looks like this. 4 sections each repeated 2 times, but none of them ever return, except for the A section that repeats instead of the second B section. Normally, this wouldn't be ideal, because there would be too much variety in the piece, and it would lose its cohesion. But I think the entertainer manages to pull it off, because of the fact that the episodes share a lot of similarities. They are not contrasting each other. Those similarities, such as accompaniment, textures, and transitions between the sections, they function as a glue and they provide enough repetition so that the music feels coherent. And repetition is the main motif of our final piece that almost made it to a #1 spot. Pachelbel's Canon in D, while originally written for strings, has received many piano arrangements because everybody just wanted to perform this piece. Its remarkable melody, its timeless chord progression, and its fairly simple level of entry led to the popularity that this piece receives. And it's also mostly associated with weddings. Whether it's a piano solo, or piano accompanied by a cello, or the original ensemble of a cello and 3 violins, all of these combinations of instruments are perfect choice for your wedding day. But the piano arrangement, although I would say even more popular than the original, thanks to the convenience of being able to play it on a single instrument, is actually its detriment. The word canon is a technique that employs a melody with 1 or more imitations of it after a certain duration. In case of canon in D, we have 3 violins playing the melodic line. The first one, the leading violin, plays 4 bars of music. After that, it moves to something else, and the second violin repeats the 4 bars of the leading one. After another 4 bars, the third violin again restates the lead violin motif. The second violin plays the second motif, and the leading violin once again moves to something new. So basically, all 3 violins play the exact same material throughout the piece, just separated by 4 bars in case of the second violin, and 8 bars in case of the third. The leading violin never repeats the same passage, therefore provides a variety for the piece. The following violins provide repetition as they imitate the leading one. The problem with all the piano arrangements is that it's basically impossible to recreate the same effect on a solo instrument. Some arrangements try to some extent, but most of them just default to the obvious thing of following just the leading violin melody. This leads to the music having too much variety, therefore it becomes pretty incoherent. As well as it actually is not a canon anymore, just a singular melodic line with an accompaniment. This leads to the lack of memorability. I mean, you surely do recognize this part. But do you remember what came before that? Or what will come after? Probably not. So we have looked at 4 amazing pieces of music that surely deserves to be called overplayed, but all of them lacked in few areas that's holding them back from bearing the title the most overplayed. That title, in my opinion, belongs to River Flows in You. A composition written in the year 2001 by a South Korean British composer and pianist called Yiruma. The track gathered some popularity in the first few years of its release, but the biggest recognition came after its inclusion in the Twilight movie soundtrack in the year 2008. After that, it became a worldwide hit. It is hard to tell what is this piece's biggest strength, because it just passes every criteria in a list with flying colors. It has quite a similar calm feeling to the Moonlight Sonata that I have mentioned earlier, but this piece puts much more emphasis on the melody rather than the texture. The melody perfectly balances these striking leaps that adds nuance to it, with a stepwise motion that brings the aforementioned calmness while it fills the space created by those leaps. The chords of this composition literally flows between each other, just as the river in the title. It uses a closed loop progression of chords 6, 4, 5 and 1. The seamless transition between the chords is achieved by the fact that each and one of them share a same 1 or 2 notes with the upcoming chord. The only exception occurs at the end of the cycle, where it turns around and begins a new one. The last chord of the progression is E major, and the one that follows, the first chord of the progression, is F sharp minor. These 2 chords share 0 notes. In addition, the E major contains a note B, which is a leading tone to our tonic center of this piece, A natural. And the chord of F sharp minor actually contains the note of A natural. So this is kind of a cadence. But it is weakened by numerous aspects, so it doesn't come off as a resolution to some kind of tension. so it doesn't break the calm nature of it. This drastically helps with the memorability of the piece, same as the fact that it is basically structured as a pop song. First, we get 4 bars of intro that uses a fragment of the melodic line that is featured in the verse of this piece. The verse lasts 4 bars as well, and is repeated 2 times with slight adjustments in the repetition. What follows can be classified as a chorus of this piece. The melody is constructed solely of 16th notes, once again contributing to the flowing calmness of the music. After that, we once again repeat a verse 2 times, followed by another chorus. The piece then ends as gently as it started, with an outro. So basically, we are jumping between 2 main sections, which once again makes the piece memorable. And the last piece to our puzzle is the difficulty of performance. This piece is very easy to play. The left-hand accompaniment is just arpeggios of the 4 already mentioned chords, and the right-hand melody fits the hand pretty nicely. The only real challenge may be getting up to the right tempo, but that can be achieved fairly quickly with efficient training. And that's it. River Flows in You takes #1 spot based on our list of criterias. Of course, a lot of these takes are based on opinion, and yours may differ from mine, so I'm curious to find out what is your opinion on the most overplayed piano piece of all time. Let me know down below in the comments. I thank you so much for watching and see you next time. Bye.